The Yoon-Biden summit laying out new visions for Seoul-Washington relations, taking their 70 years of alliance to the next level under the Washington Declaration, where the U.S. vows an overwhelming commitment to extended deterrence for Seoul, including the use of nuclear weapons. The alliance is looking to diversify in scope, spanning from bio to high-tech sectors for mutually beneficial economic partnership. Yoon and Biden once again toast the ironclad alliance at a state dinner with South Korean baseball player Park Chan-ho and Hollywood star Angelina Jolie among the guests. Good afternoon. We start with the 70 years of the Seoul-Washington alliance, now looking to go beyond security. The Yoon-Biden summit has laid out the blueprint of a stronger and broader alliance ahead, spanning from nuclear deterrence to high-tech and space endeavors. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
Putting the alliance in action towards the future. President Yoon and Joe Biden's joint statement on Wednesday ranged from traditional security and trade relations to addressing new emerging challenges as a global comprehensive strategic alliance.
우리 양국은 자유와 민주주의라는 깊은 뿌리를 토대로 지난 70년간 도전과 위기를 함께 이겨나가며 강력하고 회복력 있으며 지속 가능한 가치 동맹을 일궈냈습니다.
At a joint press conference after their 80-minute summit, the two commanders-in-chief first reaffirmed the strength of the ironclad 70-year military alliance. Amid North Korea's growing nuclear and missile threats, they issued the Washington Declaration, which includes the creation of a new nuclear consultation group and more regular visits of U.S. strategic assets to the Korean Peninsula. Major economic points included close consultations on the impact of U.S. industrial policies on South Korean firms, along with separate documents on achieving economic security by cooperating on high-tech sectors and supply chains of critical and emerging technologies. The two sides also issued a strategic cybersecurity cooperation framework and agreed to explore both commercial and military ventures on space tech to meet new forms of security threats in the virtual and space domains. Furthermore, to foster synergy between future generations, the two sides agreed to enhance institutional efforts for exchange, including programs for young people and STEM students. Based on their shared values of liberal democracy, Yoon and Biden declared they would make joint efforts to bring peace and stability for the international community.
We both understand that our democracies and our people are our greatest source of strength, and working together and make our nation stronger and more effective. From tracking the climate crisis and strengthening our effort to fight it, and strengthening global health.
In terms of their shared values on global issues, the two leaders condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine and, in the strongest possible terms, Moscow's actions against civilians and critical infrastructure. While further aid was not announced, they noted that they are supporting Ukraine through political, security, humanitarian and economic assistance. Calling for peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, the two leaders also opposed unilateral revisionist attempts in the Indo-Pacific region, citing unlawful maritime claims, the militarization of reclaimed features, and forceful activities. Going forward, Yoon and Biden further committed to strengthening cooperation both mutually and trilaterally with Japan to make the Indo-Pacific region prosperous, connected, secure and resilient. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
The summit really puts the emphasis on extended deterrence, which had a separate statement just for itself. Dubbed the Washington Declaration, it says the U.S. will decisively defend and deter a North Korean attack on Seoul, including through the use of nuclear weapons. There's a much-needed reassurance for South Koreans amid increasing threats from North Korea. Our Choi Min-jung tells us more.
South Korea and the United States have agreed to develop an even stronger mutual defense relationship. At Wednesday's summit meeting, Presidents Yoon and Biden announced a joint statement dubbed the Washington Declaration, which is aimed at strengthening extended deterrence against North Korea's evolving threats. Outlining the statement at a joint press conference following the summit, the presidents reaffirmed their commitment to strengthening their military capabilities.
한미 양국은 북한의 핵 공격 시 즉각적인 정상 간 협의를 갖기로 했으며 이를 통해 미국의 핵무기를 포함하여 동맹의 모든 전력을 사용한 신속하고 압도적이며 결정적인 대응을 취하기로 약속했습니다.
The Washington Declaration is a prudent step to reinforce extended deterrence and respond to advancing DPRK nuclear threat. Look, a nuclear attack by North Korea against the United States or its allies or partisans or partners is unacceptable and will result in the end of whatever regime were to take such an action.
The two presidents also announced the establishment of a new nuclear consultative group to engage in deeper cooperative decision-making on nuclear deterrence. Under the terms of the NCG, the two countries will share information on nuclear assets and intelligence and jointly plan responses and exercises.
At times of emergency on the Korean Peninsula, we will discuss joint extended deterrence and implementation plans that combine South Korea's advanced conventional forces with U.S. nuclear forces. We will immediately report the results to the heads of both countries.
Biden also acknowledged that there is even closer cooperation, but made clear that this does not mean the U.S. will station nuclear weapons on the peninsula. He also underscored that the U.S. has the absolute authority to use nuclear weapons. However, U.S. officials did say that Washington is planning strategic visits of U.S. nuclear-armed submarines to South Korea, a move not seen since the 1980s. Pundits have assessed that Biden is committed to giving Seoul a central role in strategic planning, as South Korea reaffirmed its commitment to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty by putting aside efforts to pursue its own nuclear arsenal. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The Seoul-Washington alliance is looking to go beyond security. It will advance and diversify in scope, spanning from bio to high-tech sectors for mutually beneficial economic partnership. Our Keon has this one.
South Korea deepens its technology partnership with the U.S. During the South Korea-U.S. summit, the two countries' top leaders made a joint statement where they pledged to establish a next-generation critical and emerging technologies dialogue led by their national security advisors. This dialogue will be held every year, with the first talks to come in the second half of this year.
The dialogue will help establish digital technology standards and regulation while closely cooperating in sectors such as AI, digital tech, biotech, open LAN, blockchain, and cybersecurity.
Following the statement, the presidential office said, as technology and national security have become inseparable, the significance of tech cooperation between the two countries is increasing. This dialogue is to expand public and private cooperation between Seoul and Washington on leading-edge semiconductors, batteries, and quantum technology. Top officials from the two countries also noted further cooperation on artificial intelligence, biotechnology, medical AI, and biomanufacturing. People-to-people exchange programs for young talents were also discussed. South Korea's Ministry of Education said the two countries have decided to invest in the Korea-U.S. Educational Exchange Initiative for Youth in STEM, which is short for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, by injecting $30 million each into the program. They will shortlist over 2,000 young talents in science and technology who will take part in this initiative. Special exchange programs for university students studying science and engineering will also be rolled out. The ministry says it will work with its U.S. counterparts in order to successfully launch the program in 2024. Meanwhile, after the summit, the leaders of the two countries said they will continue to have close consultations to ensure the U.S. CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act encourage mutually beneficial corporate investment. When asked whether attempts to restrict China's expansion in chip production are having a heavy toll on South Korea, U.S. President Joe Biden responded that these acts are a win-win for both Seoul and Washington, as they are helping economic growth in the U.S. while creating jobs in South Korea.
I don't think at least we don't, and I don't think so far, most of the South Korean companies believe that there's somehow a U.S. effort to slow them down, prevent their growth, or anything like that. We'd like to see them grow.
President Yoon Suk-yeol also welcomed more investment in batteries, chips, and EVs, adding that his counterpart would consider more U.S. investment in Korean businesses. Lee Hyun, Arirang News.
The Yoon-Biden summit is also paving the way for the bilateral alliance to enter fresh areas, namely cyberspace and outer space. Our Moon-Hae-ryung reports.
In commemoration of the 70th anniversary of the alliance between South Korea and the United States, the two presidents discussed extending the alliance in cybersecurity and space exploration during the summit. In recognition of rising cybersecurity threats, the Strategic Cybersecurity Cooperation Framework has been established. It's an extension of the Mutual Defense Treaty in cyberspace, a bilateral defense agreement that establishes the commitment of the US and South Korea to provide mutual defense support in case of an attack from a third party. The framework establishes the need to prioritize cybersecurity as a national policy and strategic priority through the sharing of information regarding cyber threats and building a civil-military academic partnership for cyber training, research, and development. Cybersecurity has been a key issue for South Korea in recent times with illegal cryptocurrency activities and cyber threats from North Korea. During his stay in the US, President Yoon also visited NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center with US Vice President Kamala Harris. With the third launch of the Korean space rocket Nuri carrying 8 satellites coming up next month, he was able to see how satellites are used by NASA to monitor climate change, further demonstrating the importance of developing space programs at home and collaboration with American aeronautics research. Harris also mentioned South Korea's lunar orbiter Danuri, which was launched last year on board a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from Florida, as a stepping stone for further collaboration in space exploration.
With regard to this afternoon here at Goddard, we discussed our cooperation on the issue of space exploration. Notably, last year, South Korea placed a satellite in lunar orbit that carries a high-resolution camera from NASA, and will continue to work to search for water on the moon. South Korea will soon fly payloads through NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services Program. I like to think of it as our version of a rideshare program for space exploration.
NASA's Deputy Administrator and South Korea's Minister of Science and ICT signed a joint statement of intent to further cooperate in science and exploration. In addition to expanding the alliance to space exploration, Yoon and Biden agreed to work on space security collaboration, as well as clarifying the recent policy that eased US export restrictions for satellites, a move that greatly benefits South Korea's space launch industry. Moon-Hae-ryung, Arirang News.
But again, all these are built upon, quote, an alliance forged in blood that dates to the end of the Korean War. The two leaders have repeatedly emphasized the importance of the security alliance that has been in place for 70 years. Our Kim Do-yeon takes a look at the leaders' remarks.
Commemorating the 7 decades of the ROK-US alliance while mapping out the next decades to come, President Yoon Suk-yeol and President Joe Biden held nothing back in hailing what's been achieved through relations between the two countries.
한미 동맹은 세계의 자유와 평화, 번영을 위한 글로벌 동맹입니다. 한미 동맹은 미래로 나아가는 동맹이고 행동하는 동맹입니다. 저는 동맹의 70년 역사를 되돌아보고 동맹의 미래를 함께 설계하기 위해 여기 왔습니다.
Mr. President, ours is a future filled with unimaginable opportunity and endless possibility. Nothing is beyond our ability to reach when our nations and our people stand united. We have proven that time and again over the last 70 years.
The remarks were made during the arrival ceremony for President Yoon, and the celebration was at the fullest scale as Yoon's visit was a state visit, the highest level of invitation for a foreign leader. This is the first time in 12 years that such an invitation has been extended to a South Korean president, while it's only the second state visit to take place under the Biden administration. Celebrations aside, it was clear the two leaders were prepared to make decisions together that will reflect the values of the alliance.
힘에 의한 현상 변경 시도, 또 공급망의 분절과 교란, 식량과 에너지 안보 문제 등으로 세계의 평화와 안전이 도전받고 위협받고 있습니다. 가치 동맹인 한미 동맹이 세계 평화와 번영을 위협하는 위기를 극복해 나가는데 핵심적인 역할을 할 수 있습니다.
While the two leaders spoke on a global scale, the two also recognized the individual efforts made to uphold the very core spirit of the alliance. The two announced that a missing soldier from the Korean War has been accounted for. His name, Army Corporal Luther H. Story, a Medal of Honor recipient.
The Republic of Korea and the United States worked together to identify Corporal Story's remains. Among those buried as a Korean War unknown in the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific. Today, we can return him to his family and to his rest with all the honors he deserves, because we never forget our heroes.
The joint statement on this matter said, the supreme sacrifice and heroism of Corporal Luther Story is illustrative of the freedom, security, and prosperity the South Korean people have today. There are still more missing to be found, but the announcement shows that while both nations look forward to a collaborative future, a reminder of the cost of freedom is just as important. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
Yoon and Biden once again toast the ironclad alliance at a state dinner, with South Korean baseball player Park Chan-ho and Hollywood star Angelina Jolie among the guests. Our Han Sung-woo has the details.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and First Lady Kim Geon-hee were welcomed with open arms by U.S. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden to a state dinner on Wednesday at the White House, where the two leaders reaffirmed the ironclad alliance their countries share.
Into the future of the Republic of Korea and the United States will create together. May we do it together for another 170 years.
여러분, 오늘은 한미 동맹이라는 이 네잎 클로버가 지난 70년의 영광을 넘어 새로운 뿌리를 뻗어나가는 역사적인 날로 기억되기 바랍니다. 미래로 힘차게 전진하는 한미 동맹을 위하여 건배를 제의합니다. 우리의 강철 같은 동맹을 위하여.
Among the nearly 200 guests invited were several U.S. senators and governors. Hollywood icon Angelina Jolie, co-founder of Home Depot Arthur Blank, pachinko author Min-jin Lee, former Major League Baseball pitcher Park Chan-ho, and Olympic snowboarding champion Chloe Kim. While most guests entered strolling in from the Jacqueline Kennedy Garden in the East Wing, the Bidens welcomed President Yoon and First Lady Kim on a red carpet on the steps of the North Portico. Jill Biden recruited Korean-American celebrity chef Edward Lee to whip up a menu showcasing the best of America with the Korean touch. Crab cakes, galbijjim beef ribs, and for dessert, banana splits. State dinners are known to be among the highest diplomatic honors the U.S. bestows on visiting dignitaries. Biden's first invitation to a state dinner went to French President Emmanuel Macron late last year. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
And while in the U.S., President Yoon Suk-yeol took time to meet with Tesla CEO Elon Musk and asked for investment for a Tesla production facility in South Korea. According to the presidential office, Wednesday's meeting took place at Musk's request. Yoon stressed that South Korea is an ideal location for a running gigafactory, given its advanced robotics and labor force, while vowing active support in terms of location and taxes. Musk responded that he expects to pay a visit to South Korea, saying the country remains a leading candidate for a gigafactory. Yoon also expressed hope for space cooperation between domestic businesses and Musk's spacecraft company, SpaceX. In the meantime, the South Korean and the U.S. First Ladies Kim Gun-hee and Jill Biden visited the National Gallery for a private tour of exhibits by abstract painter Mark Rothko. They were joined by Mark Rothko's son, Christopher, and were taken to see a new exhibit that is yet to be opened to the public. The First Ladies previously met back in May during Joe Biden's visit to Seoul, where Jill Biden mentioned Rothko's exhibition in South Korea, organized by former curator Kim, saying it was the first such large-scale loan of paintings from the U.S. National Gallery. Back here at home, Samsung Electronics posted its worst quarterly results in 14 years amid falling prices and demand for chips. The sluggish performance will likely continue into the second quarter before gradually improving in the second half of the year. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-hyung reports.
First quarter profits for South Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics almost halved from the previous year amid continued sluggish global chip demand. The company on Thursday reported an operating profit of around 640 billion Korean won, which at the current rate is roughly 477 million US dollars, a dramatic 95.5% on-year drop. The figure dropped below the 1 trillion won level for the first time in 14 years. Sales for the same period plunged by about 18% on-year to 63.7 trillion won, or $47.5 billion. The latest results were mainly driven by the weaker performance in the industry due to the global economic slowdown. Memory chip prices are falling as demand drops and inventory swells. In fact, the operating loss for the company's chip business came to almost 4.6 trillion won, or $3.4 billion. It's the first time Samsung's chip department has posted a deficit since the global financial crisis in 2009. Chip sector sales came to around 14 trillion won, or $10 billion, down nearly 50% from the previous year. Meanwhile, the firm's DX division, which makes mobile phones and TVs, saw its sales drop slightly from the year before to 46 trillion won, or roughly $34 billion. The company predicts sluggish demand to continue in the second quarter as well, but to gradually rise in the second half of this year, with performance expected to recover during that period. Shin Ha-hyung, Arirang News.
Business sentiment in the manufacturing sector remains sluggish. Data from the Bank of Korea on Thursday shows that the business sentiment index for the manufacturing sector this month came to 70 for the second month in a row. A reading below 100 indicates a pessimistic outlook. An official from the central bank linked the low business sentiment to the ongoing slump in the semiconductor industry, despite the rising demand for chemical products and eco-friendly cars. In other news, Chinese President Xi Jinping held phone talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky for the first time since the war in Ukraine began. She reportedly told Zelensky that Beijing will send an envoy to Kyiv to serve as a mediator to pursue a political settlement. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
For the first time since the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, Chinese President Xi Jinping held phone talks with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky on Wednesday. The phone call between the two leaders lasted for nearly an hour, with Zelensky noting that the talks were long and meaningful. Posting to Twitter, Zelensky also said that the phone conversation between the two leaders will give a powerful impetus to the development of their bilateral relations. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said Beijing's core stance is to facilitate talks for peace, noting that an envoy will be sent to Kyiv to facilitate peace talks. Beijing also stressed again that it has always stood on the side of peace on the Ukraine issue, adding that all parties involved reflect on the Ukraine crisis and seek a new way for everlasting peace in Europe. In response to the phone talks between the two leaders, Moscow praised Beijing's readiness to establish peace talks, but slammed Kyiv for rejecting any sound initiatives aimed at a settlement. While Washington welcomed the talks between Xi and Zelensky, it said it was too soon to tell if it would lead to a peace deal. The phone call follows a state visit to Russia by President Xi last month. As a traditional ally of Russia, China has refrained from denouncing Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but has taken on the role of a mediator in a bid to end the war in Ukraine. While China's role in the peace process has largely been met with skepticism, Ukraine has cautiously welcomed the initiative. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea's Professional Baseball League is seeing a rebound in fan attendee after pandemic years as the KBO League has surpassed 1 million attendance for 2023 in just 101 games. According to the league organizers on Wednesday, the milestone has been reached in the 5th fastest time since the league began the 10-team system. Normally, the league has 5 games per day, 6 days a week. The fastest time it took for the league to surpass 1 million attendees was in 2019, when it needed just 90 games. Much like many other professional leagues around the world, the KBO League was also impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic restrictions, with games played without fans at the peak of the pandemic.
Good afternoon. Chile's start is rising fast with sunshine going up 3 to 9 degrees higher than yesterday. So as you have guessed, temperature gaps between lows and highs are very wide, nearly 20 degrees Celsius across Korea. Most areas are seeing highs that are above 20 degrees this afternoon under sunny skies with normal to good air quality nationwide. So it's a great day to spend some time outdoors this afternoon. However, those in the east of Gangwon-do province need to brace for strong winds from this afternoon. Meanwhile, Jeju and South Coast will see rain tomorrow, which will spread nationwide by Saturday. That last day of April will be a pleasant one. Now, over in Washington, D.C., it's going to be dry during the day with some sunshine before another round of showers approach by the sunset on Thursday. With that in mind, here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of the day.